I'm Dave Gold. I'm the founder of Heart Powered Ventures, and I am here today with my team, my guests, some Commonwealth members. We got a whole hodgepodge of beautiful people here today. And for those of you who have tuned in before these sessions, you know that we cover topics that are of interest and relevance and touch our hearts for all entrepreneurs, but especially those of us who are motivated to do something big in the world and follow our own passion. So today, first of all, I want to introduce our team here. Rennie Orr,
Hi.
our operations officer. Down in the corner, I've got Stacy Gunter,
Hello, friends.
queen of connectivity and Miss Sunshine all the time. Josh McCormick, our newest member, who is our media savvy. Josh
Hi.
joining us. Josh is the one that records these and takes these pieces and puts them out in our various channels so that we can kind of get highlight reels of this. I also have one of our newest Commonwealth members, Brandon Christian. Great to have you, founder of Poor People. And Brandon, you know, it's kind of happenstance you're here, but I think it's great because some of the questions that you have, Brandon's actively in the money raise phase of his business right now. So he'll probably have and I want you to feel free as we go through this to ask some questions of Benji. Okay. So also, and then there's Benji. So
Hi.
this is Benji Jones.
And I'm a girl, by the way. I'm a girl.
We know that. Well, Benji, you picked the name, so you've got no.
No, I didn't.
Well, why don't you tell me
Pick the name.
how you
My
became?
dad's name is Benjamin, and I'm the fourth girl. So yes, it is my name.
I love that.
Okay, that's all.
Is we lawyers, you and I say, is that your legal name?
It is
Benji?
my legal name,
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
just like the dog.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Not that I'm dating myself or anything.
No, I know, but you are to me. That's all. No one else has any idea what it is. So Benji is a very accomplished, successful, and just respected attorney here we're in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area. Was partnered with one of my friends and attorneys, Jim Verdonick, in the capital raising business, which is one of the things that Jim and Benji do very well. And then recently they're in the mold, the entrepreneurial mold, because, well, you should tell us about how you left the cush job you had of, I don't know, how many lawyers and wordsmiths?
I don't, hundreds.
Hundreds.
So Jim and I both come from like 20, for me, him longer, plus years of working with big law firms. And we learned a lot. They were great people. But we met each other and started working together and kind of decided that we wanted to practice law in the way we enjoyed, with clients that we wanted to work for in the way we wanted to work. So we broke off about almost 2 years ago now and started Innovate Capital Law. It's just me and Jim, and we are off trying to change the world bit by bit.
Wow. I told you she was one of us, guys. So, and you changed the world by...
We changed the world by really working with entrepreneurs to think strategically about different paths to raise capital. We'll help you with the formation stuff and the kind of fundamental corporate governance and fundamental documents. But what our sweet spot is really talking to clients about different strategies to get the money in the door that they need to grow. We're not investment bankers, so we don't make deals. We don't make those introductions to make the deal happen, but we help them think about the new paths to get money in the door from different types of people, depending on where they are within their development, who they want, how much money they want to raise, and who their kind of audience is.
So you and we've talked a couple of times, but one of the things I mentioned to you is, well, I mean, I met Jim when Jim brokered the sale or shepherded the sale of my software company. And that was a great, we was all self-raised cap. We didn't get any outside money. We did it all self-generative, which was terrific. And then in the next company that I worked with Jim in, I needed to raise money, and I went through that process, and I found it decidedly unpleasant. And one of the things that I am excited about that this has happened in the marketplace and that you and Jim have really specialized in is finding some creative ways to raise money that are more in line with our culture and our values and our disposition than going before angel groups or venture groups and which Brandon knows about this and basically begging for money. So talk a little bit about, well, maybe first you can talk about the framework, because I know it's not just the Wild West out there. There are certain limitations, certain structures are in. So let's talk about the structures that all capital raise come in, and then we can talk about some of the creative ways that we can raise money.
Yep, sure. So just the fundamental rule around raising capital. So if you're asking a third party, somebody else, to give you money, and you're promising to return them more money in exchange for that money, I don't care what name you put on it. I don't care if you call it common stock or preferred stock or a promissory note or a revenue share or special ice cream flavor of the month. If you're asking them to do that, then you're usually more likely than not offering a security to someone. So, and when you do that, the fundamental rules are no matter how big the offering is, no matter who you're trying to take the money from, if you are offering and selling a security, you need to either register the sale of that security with regulators, the Securities Exchange Commission, and sometimes state regulators, or find an exemption from that registration requirement. Okay, that is the key rule. And most of the time, companies like the ones that we're talking to today don't want to file an S1 with the SEC and go public. They want to bring their money into their company, stay private, not be subject to SEC scrutiny or all the myriad of rules. So we are now in the world of trying to find that magic exemption that you can use to bring the capital in. And one of the things that's really changed in the past almost decade is that the way you can do it, there 10 years ago, there was basically one way that everybody raised capital, and that was by doing a private placement to wealthy, sophisticated, experienced investors known as accredited investors. And that was really the only way you could do it as a private company. You couldn't advertise your deal. You couldn't bring in people who weren't otherwise meeting those categories. That was it. So it made it much harder for many companies to find the capital that they needed to grow. Now, for a whole bunch of reasons, there's a lot more paths. You don't have to follow just that one path. And one of the things that Jim and I help people do is assess the different paths and figure out which path to follow depending on what their objectives are today. Okay. And so you might call them different exemptions. They are different exemptions, and each exemption has different rules you have to follow. And we help people figure out which one to follow, which path to be on, and how to follow the rules. And the really most critical thing in all of this is figure out the path you're on before you start. And that's what we help people do.
That was great. Man, I couldn't have written that out any better than you just delivered it. So just to summarize, because as we're entrepreneurs, we think of securities, we think of over the counter, we think of buying public stuff, but basically there's almost like the presumption that if you're taking money for your company for another person, that you are now offering a security, which triggers a whole bunch of stuff that we don't want to trigger.
That's right. If you're getting passive money into your company from someone, you need to think about securities laws, because they aren't controlling the use of their money. And that's what the securities laws are intended to protect the investor about. And just another kind of overarching thing to understand about how securities laws, whether it's good, bad, ugly, people think it's great or not, the type of investor in this country is kind of divided into two classes. There is what's known as the accredited investor, which is what I talked about, a wealthy, sophisticated, experienced investor who the regulators think are so experienced, so wealthy, they don't need protection, right? they'll be able to tell a company, I want to see your financials, I want to see, you know, your business plan, I want to see your cap table, I want to see all these things, and I'll assess it, and then I'll make a decision on whether or not I want to invest. So the regulators don't put a lot of protections around deals that only those people are involved in, because the regulators don't think they need their protection. So if you're dealing with the other type of investor, even one person who doesn't meet that accredited investor status, the regulators' red flag goes up and says, for whatever reason, we don't think you necessarily will have the leverage or the knowledge or the experience to demand certain information from the company. Therefore, we're going to establish hurdles or hoops or requirements that are designed to protect you. So one of the things when we're talking to people about whether or not how they're raising capital comes down to the question is, who do you want to bring into your deal? Are you able or willing or desirous of just limiting it to accredited investors, which by the way is still the easiest way to raise capital? Or do you want or need, or is there a business reason that you want to bring in the non-accredited investor? We also oftentimes call them the retail investor. Do you want retail investors in your deal? And if the answer to that is yes, then we have to put you into a different path. So two classes of investors, sorry, classes of whatever, and we can, you know, but there's two groups, accredited investors or non-accredited investors, and the rules are different for whichever group you're dealing with.
So your job, because the securities they're acting like almost a fiduciary relationship. They're saying we're going to protect investors to make sure
the regulators,
if you can protect yourself, we don't care about you. But if you're not, we're going to take care of you. So ideally, it's done there to make sure that people who put money into companies are
not defrauded, are not robbed, etc.
And your job is to, and if you have a lot of rich friends or you have a lot of rich people in their credit, that's fine. But your job is to make sure that when we're raising money, one of the jobs is to make sure we're raising money, that we're able to find a way around the SEC. We're able to find an exemption.
That you fought, that you know what you do to stay on the right path. And then the other thing that I'll say is a good securities attorney will help you do is the other kind of liability exposure that raising capital can expose you to, and always exposes you to, is anti-fraud liability. So, and you can never erase that liability. So if you're selling securities, you have an obligation to give the potential investors all the material information a reasonable person would need to know to make an investment decision. Okay. That can cover things you say that are untrue. So material misstatements, or material omissions. Right. I should have told you something, but I didn't. And unfortunately, the risk here is always in hindsight. Oh, shoot, I should have told you that, right? And so a good corporate securities attorney will also help you, even if you're not required by the SEC or other regulators to give disclosure to certain investors. We always want you to do some kind of disclosure so that you're protecting yourself against fraud liability for fraud, right? That you didn't, if you don't give anybody any disclosure, then there's a chance that maybe you have omitted some material information about the decision to invest. So two things you have to deal with is the exemption path, right? Are we following the rules to make this offer and sale? And then also, are we given the right disclosure as a CYA, right? Our job is to help you reduce that fraud liability exposure as much as we can.
So let's talk about some of the really creative ways that you have I don't want to say come up with, but in a way it is. I know you're always kind of responding to what's there and finding ways that we can raise money easily without getting in trouble.
Yep.
Let's talk about some of the more creative ways that we can do that as entrepreneurs, especially in the early stages or mid stages of our Or
Yep.
business
So outside of the going to your 10 really wealthy people that you know, which is the way it's always happened, using the internet to raise capital has now become available to people. It used to be, before about 8 years ago, that you couldn't advertise. You couldn't put on a billboard that you were selling securities in a private company, right? You had to keep it quiet. You couldn't generally solicit potential investors. Well, in 2012, a law called the Jobs Act of 2012 changed that. It said, okay, you can now advertise to accredited investors and fall within this path. Okay, great. So we can advertise. But if you want to do deals that include non-accredited investors, there's new paths you have to follow and very precise rules. And one of those things is what I call investment crowdfunding. It's technically called regulation crowdfunding. Some people call it regulation CF. Some people call it reg CF. There's always 6 different words to the same thing that makes it even more confusing for people trying to understand it. It's magic. It keeps us in business when we call it different things.
Of course.
So reg CF is the investment crowdfunding exemption. It works very, very, very much like a Kickstarter campaign or an Indiegogo campaign or a GoFundMe campaign, except instead of asking people to give you money because they love you and want to donate to you or pre-sell a t-shirt or a product, it is you're selling to the world, to the crowd, a security. And so the same things that you do for those Kickstarter or what we call traditional crowdfunding campaigns, a landing page, videos, social media posts, all that kind of stuff you do for these deals, but you add on to it securities regulation. So the content of what you can say, when and how, and to whom, and how much money you can take from different people is all regulated. So it's kind of Kickstarter on steroids. How about that? And you can't do it through Kickstarter. You have to do it through a certain type of platform that's a regulated entity called a funding portal.
Okay,
and
so
so
if
yeah,
I can stop for a
go
second.
ahead. That's a lot, I know.
No, you're just, is it that so everyone probably is familiar with the Kickstarter stuff. The difference, what you're talking about, a regulatory kicks and regulatory, is in this crowdfunding through the regulation, the person who is donating is expecting a return.
Correct.
A return.
Correct.
Saying, I believe in you, have fun, take my money, do what you want to do.
Here's $100, and in 3 years, you'll give me $150 back.
Okay, good.
Here's $100, and I now own a share of common stock in your company. And when the company gets sold, I'll get whatever the value of the common stock is at that deal.
Okay.
Okay.
So who is a good, I mean, this sounds great. I think everyone said, I want to do this. So who is the target market for this?
So
the target market, meaning not the person you're.
What type of company?
Yes, exactly.
Is a good candidate for crowdfunding?
Yes.
Well, first of all, a company that has a crowd. It's not like Field of Dreams of if you build it, they will come. Just like with a Kickstarter campaign, these platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they don't bring people to you. They become your catcher's mitt for people to come to, right? And so if you don't have a crowd of followers that love you, care for you, get touched by social media, get touched by your usual email blasts, if you don't have sufficient enough people to create a buzz about what you're doing, then your campaign won't be successful because you don't have enough, for every, I don't know the details, but, for every 100 people you can touch, probably 10 of them are going to click through to be interested, and then maybe one of them is actually going to buy. It is still a marketing concept, right? So you need a crowd to market to. You need marketing dollars, right? You need to be able to reach that crowd. Some people will do a crowdfunding campaign, and the first chunk of money they raise is designated exclusively to using it to market the crowdfunding campaign further, right? So and so it's not inconsequential, kind of the marketing dollars that you need. You also need to think about whether or not crowdfunding is a good choice for your company. And there's different types of securities that have become popularized by crowdfunding. So sometimes giving a share of common stock to a large number of people is problematic, right? So crowdfunding campaigns usually have hundreds to maybe thousands of participants in it, right? And the concept of giving a share of common stock in your company to 1,000 people is pretty daunting, right? So there have been developed some hybrid new forms of securities that can bring people into your company in a way that they feel like they own the company. They feel like they are kind of part of the core team, but
Right.
maybe they technically aren't legally entitled to the same kind of rights. One of the kinds of securities that Jim and I are a really big fan of that work for some companies, but not everyone, is a revenue share note.
Mm.
And first of all, to be able to use a revenue share note, you probably need revenue, right? So if you don't have revenue, this might not work, or it might work for a I just need the $100,000 and then I'm going to get revenue company, but you need revenue. But let's talk about how it works. So I loan you $1. You promise to pay me $1.50, 1.5x in a certain amount of time, 3 years. How do you pay that back? Well, there's no coupon. There's no interest rate. It's just, I'm going to give you a 5x return. And instead of giving you an 8% interest every month, I'm going to give you a portion of my revenue.
Mm.
So for every month for the next 3 years, I'm going to give you 10% of my revenue until I pay you back $1.50. Okay.
Wow.
Which means the higher my revenue, the more I pay out, but the lower my revenue, the less I pay. So it's the default risk lowers. So if you've got a company that's seasonal, let's say an ice cream shop at the beach, right? We know that April, May, June, July, and August, they're making lots of money, at least not in, in other times, not COVID, right? And so 10% of their revenue is pretty high. But in the middle of December, they might even be closed, right? But they don't owe anybody anything if their revenue is zero, right? And the other really neat thing about a revenue share, it creates a brand ambassador. It creates the people who have invested in the revenue share know, okay, let's take the ice cream shop. For every ice cream cone they sell, I'm going to get a penny. Okay. So if I'm at the beach, I'm going to go, instead of going to the Winn-Dixie and buying a pint of ice cream, I'm going to go and buy an ice cream cone from my ice cream truck, right? My ice cream producers, because I know I'm going to get a penny. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask all my neighbors to bring their kids with me on Friday afternoon to go get an ice cream, right? Because now I'm going to get 10 cents because I brought 10 people. So you create this buzz. You're creating this brand ambassador. It's great for pubs and breweries.
So
right?
I want to, there's so much here. I want to make one point, and then I actually want Brandon. I thought it might be fun since Brandon's here to tell you his situation, have a real life situation.
Okay.
And, let's just spend like 5 minutes or so thinking, okay, here's what he wants to do. And yeah, and that'll be, because I think you and I are some of it we're geeking out. I mean, I love the lawyer stuff, and I'm trying to keep my lawyer hat on and my entrepreneur hat on, even though we're keeping it.
It's
Very
all
great.
about, it's really all about the circumstances of each person. So me talking to
Right.
Brandon is a great idea.
But I also want to just point out something you and I talked about yesterday. We had fun since we're both marketing people as well as business people and attorneys. Is that in addition to raising money, this is a marketing campaign.
That's
This
right.
is actually this. So this
It's
has to
building
do
your brand. So the,
right.
the types of companies that are great for investment crowdfunding are actually the ones that don't need the money. They
Right.
want to bring in more money. They can use having more money, but really what they want is their brand recognition, their brand ambassadors, people for them to build their market, their presence within across the nation. I just worked on a company that has developed a new drive up delivery, not delivery, but restaurant app. So instead of me having to use Chick-fil-A's, app and tell them I'm here, it's a universal, I'm here to pick up my grocery app that lots of different like independent business restaurants can use. And they are located here in North Carolina, and they really wanted to expand their footprint nationally. And so they use crowdfunding to bring in more capital for that growth, but also to expand their marketing presence, expand their brand, to build their brand recognition across the country. So it is because you have to market, so you
Right.
might as well take advantage of the marketing.
Right. Great. So I'm just actually, the more I think about it, the more exciting, even though it's a bit of a high risk strategy. So Brandon, what I'd like you to do, just to also cognizant of time
Can
here.
I say something real quick? Brandon, you're not my client, so I'm not giving investment advice. I'm not giving legal advice. And that's true for everybody. Sorry, I didn't do that disclosure at the get-go. All of this is just business advice.
General business, right.
General business education. So
That's what we do.
sorry.
However, I can tell you, and I'm going to say this again, that if you are a business looking for great advice, there's none finer than these two. I mean, really, seriously. I want to say one other thing before I go to Brandon. It's something Jim, we sold this company in 99, 2000. And over the last 20 years, every time I've had a question or needed something, I've called Jim, and Jim's always been there. And Jim said, and I kind of felt a little bit bad. He said, Dave, my motto is I take care of my clients long after they can take care of me. So when you work with Jim and Benji, you are developing a you're developing a relationship that's going to go with you the whole time. So in case I forgot to say that, I just want to commend what great people you are, as well as great lawyers.
Thank you.
All right. So Brandon, give her the couple minutes, realizing you're not getting any advice here.
Elevator speech,
Give
man.
it a couple
What do you do?
2 minutes of what you do, where you are, and why you're raising money. You there?
Oh, he looks frozen.
Are you frozen up? Man, this was so great. I gave you the lead in, man. Batting practice, fastball, a whole bit.
He's gone.
All right. Okay. So, well, maybe he gets back, and Brandon, if you can hear, get off and get back on again, if you will. So I want to know how much. So if I'm thinking about this, what should I be? Give me like the 4 criteria people come to you and say, yes, you're a good fit because, in terms of how much you can spend on the campaign, how many people.
So let me talk about a couple of things. First of all, there's a cap on how much you can raise in this path, right? So you can't raise more than starting next February, that you can't raise more than $5 million every 12 months. It used to be $1 million. They just changed it, and that's great. So one of the first questions when we ask people how much you want to raise is, when they're talking about it, is how much do you want to raise? Okay, because that'll help us steer which path that they can be on and which one they don't. Then we want to know who their target audience is, whether or not they think they need to go to clients and customers and a broad group of people. Do they need to be able to generally solicit for potential investors? And what type of investors are they? And then we want to know about your business, how you make money, and what your long-term strategy is, because those issues help us determine what kind of security you should offer to people, right? So I was just talking about the rev share. rev share works really well with a company with high margins in their revenue and repeat repeat users. Okay.
Right.
That can take a lot of different forms. So we just talked about the cupcake, the ice cream shop, right? We can also talk about a SaaS subscription model, right? A SaaS software subscription model is a great candidate for a revenue share because once they've developed their app, once they've developed the model, once they sign somebody up, there's very low margins for them to continue to sell that product, right? And the margins for how much they're selling versus how much it costs them tend to get high. So pulling a sliver out of that margin to service your rev share it works pretty well. We also want to look at whether or not the client is interesting enough to generate the buzz, right? So you know, some people come to us and they talk to us about a medical device or a drug that may take $100,000 to get to market, $100,000 and 10 years to get to market to even begin to see revenue. That's not a great crowdfunding candidate because it takes too long and it's too much money. And the only people that might care enough about, let's just choose a hair loss drug, right, are people who are losing their hair. You want the product to be sexy. You want the story to be meaningful. You want it to have heart. So when we're talking to people about the business ideas, I want to hear what it is you're doing, why it matters, and why people love you. So if we talk about a brewery, right? Microbreweries can have huge following. People love their microbrewery, right? And people in their community will do almost anything to see it succeed. If you've got that, and if you've got this client base and a passion behind you, then usually we can figure out a legal structure that can help them help you. The whole problem 10 years ago is that businesses said, these laws don't let me go to the people who I interact with every single day and ask them to help me grow my business. And that's the idea. Can I go to my clients, my customers, my vendors, the people who are touched by my business to help me support my business? Think about a pizza, think about a restaurant that does amazing wood fire pizzas and the pizza oven dies, right? Well, how amazing that if instead of going to the bank to have to finance that new pizza oven, they could go to the people that buy pizza every day to help them replace that pizza oven or expand to a new location in another area of town, that kind of thing.
Good. So,
I don't.
yeah, I got it. I mean, what it basically is democratize it so that the person that's buying the pizza doesn't need to have $1 million.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So I think Brandon's here and I want to take advantage of Brandon. Are you unfrozen?
Yeah, sorry, technical difficulty.
No, that's okay. So Brandon, let's do that. We have about 10, 12 minutes left. Talk a little bit, give her the 2-minute version of your business and where you are in your fundraise, and then she can ask you the hard questions.
Yeah, so I'm a beauty entrepreneur. I have a skincare solutions company for troubled skin. At this time, I'm trying to do a crowdfund to transition one of my products into a sustainable packaging material. And I'm facing a challenge where to get at least one of my SKUs into this tube, it costs, or it's a minimum order quantity, order 5,000 units. So I'm trying to raise about $15,000 to $20,000 to help me get the tubing, to get some formulas, and to get access to a national buyers network, so I can start selling my products too once we get it filled.
Can I ask you a couple of questions quick?
Mhm.
So when you say crowdfunding, do you mean you're doing Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or or something else?
It will be, I found an app through the Shopify marketplace. It's called Fundlify,
Hmm.
where I can do a private raise on my own website instead of having to go through Kickstarter or GoFundMe.
Okay. So before you do that, um, the, the flag that goes off on my head about that is that to do a true crowdfunding raise where you're bringing in retail investors, right? People who are not that magic accredited investor, that app probably will not work. Okay. Because in order to bring in not the retail investor, you have to work with a specific type of platform, and you cannot host that kind of offering on your own website. Okay.
Well,
So
this wouldn't be for retail raising. It'd be for, just my direct to consumer base.
yeah, so I'm using a shorthand word to call those consumers
Retail.
retail investors. So
Right.
they are probably not all accredited investors, right? They're
Right.
they're right. They're kind of mom and pop, the everyman. So before you commit to that app development, I'd want to chat with you a little bit about whether or not the path that they're suggesting you can use really works. They could also be putting you into a crowdfunding campaign that is a traditional crowdfunding campaign. So are they talking to you about issuing securities, or are they talking to you about putting something on your website so that people can pre-buy or get a discount of pre-sales, discounts for pre-sales? Yeah. So that's traditional crowdfunding,
It
right?
pre-buy.
Right. And so pre-sales is traditional crowdfunding, which you probably will be able to use. So understanding this is pretty critical. So you are fundraising, but you're not selling a security. Do you get the difference?
Yes.
And oftentimes for companies like yours, doing a traditional crowdfunding campaign, doing a pre-sale or a discount sale or a donation or perk swag, whatever,
Mhm.
is a great first step if in the long term you think you might want to raise capital or raise bigger amounts, because you're building your presence within a crowd, right? You're already built. So when, for you, as long as you're limiting it to pre-sales of products, right?
Yeah.
The things you have to worry about are making sure you comply with what you've promised, right?
Mhm.
Consumer protections, right? Don't say I'll send you 10 boxes and then never send 10 boxes, right? That can get you in trouble.
For
But
sure.
but using that platform to build your brand, to build your crowd, to build a buzz around your business is a great strategy as a precursor to then potentially graduating to $100,000 convertible note or revenue share capital raise to take your business to the next level.
Yep.
So that leaves the question, if there is a right answer to this, is, so okay, I can go out and I can crowdfund traditionally and say, hey, I'll send you whatever, you'll get a free skincare product, or I'll give you a discount of that, and I'm not issuing a security, they're not expecting return, and there's probably a cap in terms of what I can raise in that.
Nope.
No.
But I
No
mean,
Nope.
cap.
just
No cap.
no, I don't mean legally, I mean just practically.
Well, yeah.
Like,
Well, of course, there's
thinking, if I want to raise,
unless you make those really crazy tops that people went goo goo gaga over, and like they sold like 1,400 million trillion $1,000 worth of crazy tops. It is a market driven cap. How about that? There's no formal limit on what you can raise, but people usually put a target on it so that people feel like that they are helping you reach and create momentum. You want to create momentum in any kind of crowdfunding campaign. You want to create momentum off the get-go.
Yeah.
so the question I'm asking, I guess, is that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm thinking, okay, I'd like to use the crowd theory or the crowd platform or whatever it is to raise money. I can go and I could do what Brandon's talking about doing right now, which is just giving, basically donating. People don't expect a return; they'll get a product. Or I can go and actually raise securities. I'm just wondering, is there like a threshold, a practical threshold, and say, hey, if I need to raise under X amount of money, I should go the Brandon route. If I want to go above that thing, I should go and do more of a securities raise route.
Well,
I
yeah.
think I
So
don't know. I mean, for me, I've seen people crowdfund, millions. I've seen people crowdfund 20,000 or 100,000. So I think it just depends on, how much you need and how big the crowd is, from what I've seen.
thank you. Thank you. It's not a lawyer who said it depends. But it does. It does depend. And I think one of the things that Jim and I, like, one of the reasons why we do what we do now is that it really takes time and communication and asking questions and listening to people about what they're trying to do short term and long term in order to help answer which is best. For Brandon, I would not necessarily suggest that he jumps into a investment crowdfunding campaign at this stage in his development. There is for true startups, like just the very beginning, it's really hard to succeed with an investment crowdfunding campaign, which typically are bigger, right? I mean, it's going to cost you something to do the campaign, right? So doing an investment crowdfunding campaign for only $20,000 doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because you're going to be, between marketing and everything else, you're putting too much into it. Now, doing a traditional crowdfunding campaign for $20,000, you're still putting marketing dollars in, but your outlay for that 20,000 is, you don't have to repay it or make up for it. There's kind of this, it's really about listening about what their path is. It also depends a whole lot on how educated is the person coming in, how much self-learning have they done. Jim and I love to send people off on homework. We won't even engage with them. We're like, you need to go do X, Y, and Z as homework. And when you do that homework, come back and we'll talk again, because then you're more ready to hear what I said. So Brandon has done some homework, I can tell, because as soon as I said, X or Y, he was like, no, it's Y. And I was like, oh, okay. Now we're talking the same language. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's really about taking time to build relationship and understand what the short and long-term goals are for people to know which path works. But I am a big fan of starting traditional, building that crowd, and not exposing yourself to a lot of legal expense and legal risk that's associated with selling securities.
Terrific. So I know there's like 10 more things we wanted to talk about, and I feel bad for Rinny and Josh and Stacy because we lawyered and geeked out here and they didn't get a chance to have their voices heard. So
oh, sorry.
No, that's me. No. It's fine. It's just I didn't want them to be ignored or feel that they've been marginalized. I was
Dave, can I talk about one landmine in raising capital that I think
I want you
people need to understand. So I mentioned earlier that the regulators are really concerned about whether or not you are advertising your deal, whether or not you're conducting a general solicitation. And one thing that is starting to become more prevalent that I want people who are my clients or aren't my clients, any entrepreneur to understand, is that a pitch event, a demo day, could be viewed to be general solicitation or general advertising. That the SEC just recently has come out with some rules around, if you're participating in a demo day or a pitch event, if you make an offer which can be really broadly construed. We also include some kind of a communication that's supposed to induce people to make an offer to buy. That participation, if you don't check the rules, could be viewed to be a general solicitation. And if you're in the midst of raising capital and the path you're on does not permit you to make a general solicitation, I want you to be really careful about your demo days and pitch events. And that's kind of the 30,000 foot.
Yeah.
But a lot of business advisors and incubators aren't really attuned to this, and they'll tell you, put in your slide deck, that one slide that says how much capital you're trying to raise. And I would tell you, absolutely not. Take that slide out of your deck until you talk to somebody and know what rules you're following.
Wow, that's great to know.
Sorry.
That's counterintuitive.
And all the business people are like, no, that's bullshit. That's sorry, Facebook. No. Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
for that. Oh my
Take
God.
the slide out, please.
So a couple of things. Well, main thing is, so Benji, how do we find you? How do people find you if they're just trying to figure out what your options are?
Well, there's not a lot of Benji Joneses in Raleigh, North Carolina. There is a guy who runs the NC State Krispy Kreme run. I'm not him. So Benji Jones Attorney Raleigh will get you to me. It's also Innovate Capital Law on our website. Also Benji, BENJI, at innovatecapitallaw.com is my email address. But our website is innovatecapitallaw.com, and you can click there or call me. I'm sure one of these wonderful people will put my email address on something.
And we will also be distributing these to various channels as well with your information. And like
Excellent.
I said, if you're starting you don't have a relationship with a business attorney, they're just phenomenal people, and yeah, they're high powered, and
One more plug. If you are a business who cannot otherwise afford legal services, Jim and I also run a pro bono legal clinic through Campbell University. And if you go to Campbell Law School and search business law clinic, you'll find a link for the application. Or if you emailed me and said, can you send me the link? I can send that to you. We don't in that circumstance, we have students who are doing the representation. So Jim and I are like the senior partners, and we have the junior partner students do all the work. And we typically do not do a lot of capital raising advice through the students at that point, because they're still learning the ropes, and this is pretty complicated. But we do help with formation issues, vendor contracts, founder, compensation, founder ownership, all that kind of getting started right that we want our clients to do. We do that kind of work. So if that's of interest for anyone in the group, I encourage, we are in the process of accepting applications right now, and we'll make the decision in the next few weeks, so that time is of the essence there. I will say we already have 30 applications and we only have 4 students. So it's pretty competitive.
Terrific. All right, so I just want to thank everyone, but Benji, again, you're just such a delight. We look forward to having you in the Commonwealth group tomorrow. And again,
Yep.
if you want to be able to talk with Benji more intimately, and also with other entrepreneurs that are looking at some of the same issues, there's information about the Commonwealth group on the site here, and in whatever form you find this, there'll be a link to the Commonwealth group. So again, Stacy, Josh, and Rennie, thank you very much for being here. Brandon,
Sorry
I'm
for
glad we found you.
geeking.
No, you didn't. Come on. That's why we
Maybe
paid
that
for
should be my email, not my
Yeah,
hashtag.
that.
Securities Law Geek.
.com, maybe .org. All right. But anyway, thank you, everyone. And can all of you just stay on for a second after we stop the recording in the feed? Very good.